Hello, everybody. Welcome to our podcast. Today, we've got a really exciting episode for you. We're going to be talking to Jamie Floodgate, who's a lead animator here at Blue Zoo. He's got a really awesome story of how he got into the industry, and he's going to share some top tips of his role and how to get to the position that he's in. So, hello, Jamie.
Hi. Thank you for having me.
No problem. Lovely to have you. And we've also, as usual, got our lovely Katie as well. And I'm Lauren. Hi. So, Jamie, would you like to explain to the audience what you do at Blue Zoo?
So I am a lead animator. So the kind of bones of that is animation. I spend most of my time animating, and being a lead, I look after a small team. It does obviously vary size to size depending on what the project is, but as I'm working on number blocks, we are a team of four, and so as I said, I spend most of my time animating and then just making sure that all my guys are okay and happy and healthy and on top of things. So in a nutshell, that's basically what I do.
It's kind of like parenting being a lead, isn't it?
It really is. Yeah, there's definitely a part from when you become a senior to a lead, where when you're a senior animator, all you do is animate, and you help out here and there when you're asked to. But when you become a lead, yeah, you become a parent. So yes, I have three amazing children to look after every day, which is great. So and they're not at all problematic.
I'm just so proud of them.
What's the split like for you, Jamie? Do you animate like a lot less than you did when you were just an artist? Or do you find it's not really that different?
Again, I think it depends on what the show is. So I did some lead duties on Paddington, which was a much bigger team. And because obviously you're looking after quite a few more people, you tend to do a smaller allocation of animation, because that time is then spent making sure that other people are, okay. And 8 people is a lot more work than 3 people. So with something like number blocks, the team is a lot smaller. So I tend to do kind of a similar amount to what a senior would, and because the guys don't take up as much of my time, and because the way the episodes are scheduled, it's quite a tight time frame even. So we kind of need to sort of equally adjust it out. So yeah, I pretty much do exactly the same as what I was doing as a senior, with a small team, and then just trying to make sure I find the time to help out the guys, do tutorials, anything that I feel like they could learn. We go through reviews of their previous work, anything that we can improve on, and just trying to keep that sort of family atmosphere. So we have meetings every morning just to say hello, and and especially working from home and remotely. One of the team is in Kent, the other of the team is in Spain, in Valencia, and another one works in the office. So we're all, a lot of the time we're all in different places. So we need to make sure that we really keep that kind of family vibe, and keep the team spirit high.
Yeah, that's nice. That's good.
It's nice to hear that, because I think one of the questions we get a lot from juniors is, because a lot of studios are working towards more remote and hybrid working, some people are working fully remote. Do they still get to build those relationships with their teams, even if they're not going into the studio every day? So it's nice to hear that there are things in place for your team, especially, that you are able to connect as a team, even though you're the same desk together.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, I was lucky enough to start just before the pandemic, so I had a year and a half in the studio, and found out how much of a close-knit group it was. So for me, becoming a lead, it was really, really important to carry that through, and make sure, because it can be lonely working remotely, and I don't think that I would be where I am today starting as a junior remotely, because I always had an anim director or a team lead or someone in my team that I could just tap on the shoulder and say, could you help me with this, could you help me with that? And maybe what's a 5-minute conversation is when you're typing it out on Google Chat or something like that, that can be half an hour just because. So, if anybody ever has that, I always make sure that they're always comfortable enough to say, could we jump on Zoom for a minute and, and have this chat in person? And, and obviously every morning meeting is, how are you? What did you get up to last night? How are you feeling? Did you have anything nice for tea? Just all the kind of stuff you talk about, and anything exciting. And then obviously just making sure that everyone's okay with work, because, it might be difficult for some people to say, well, actually, I'm falling behind a bit, or, I remember in my first couple of weeks just not knowing how to do something that I felt was really basic. And you kind of go, oh no, how do I ask this question without feeling like I don't belong here? Should I know this? Is this something? And it's just making sure that the guys know that any question isn't a silly question. And making sure that they're comfortable enough to ask anything, even if it is something really basic that they feel that they should know. So it's just garnering that kind of spirit between teams, and and importantly, when I'm not there, that they can look after themselves and help each other out, and give them that autonomy to be able to do their work. So it's a really rewarding role, being able to look after people and do the job that you love doing as well. So
yeah definitely. Would you say it's, well, I suppose it's twofold really, isn't it? But would you kind of say it's harder for juniors now coming into the industry in the way that it is, particularly at Blue Zoo, where we are remote and we do work like this? Like, do you think it's tougher, or is it just different?
It's probably a bit of all of it. To be fair, as I said, I think I would have found it much tougher not being able to tap somebody on the shoulder. So I don't envy juniors in that case. Having said that, as I said, I would hope that, all the teams would foster that kind of environment that a junior would be able to go, oh, could I have a chat with you? So I think it's very much a case of, as a junior, you'd probably have to be slightly more confident in a work setting than maybe you would have had to been in the studio, because there is that point where you have to go, oh, I need to physically ask for help, or I need to say, is this okay, rather than waiting for somebody to look at it and go, oh, could you do this, could you do that? So I think you have to be really a little bit more proactive. So I think that's the difference there, where you as I said, you have to really put yourself out there to say, I've done this, could you check this? And or I'm having trouble with this, or something like that. So it is different. It's definitely more difficult, and but it's just making sure that it feels seamless, really.
Yeah, definitely. Do you find as well that you're kind of like, I don't know, having to schedule, for example, more time for things like mentoring or things like that, as opposed to when you were in a studio maybe, and it comes maybe a little bit more naturally?
Yeah, absolutely. When I'm in the office with one of my guys, I know I can always just pop to their desk and go, oh, do you want to have 15 minutes? And actually another one of the team is starting to schedule in office time to be able to come in and have that kind of feedback. But yeah, I have to make sure that I'm organized and just make sure that I allocate the right time to people that might need it, even if it's just to say, you did great. Because that is just as important. In fact, it's sometimes more important than to say, oh, we could do better here, we could do better there. Obviously, that is a huge part of it. But, actually, sometimes you just say, this piece of work you've done is amazing, and continue doing that. And, and it all works for the team. So yeah.
Yeah, that's
so yeah.
Yeah, that's so true. I think especially remotely, things like that can just kind of slip under the radar a little bit, not intentionally, obviously. So yeah, like you said, making the time for it is obviously really important. So I think that leads us on to Jamie. How did you get here? What was your journey like? Because I think we know your stories, but it's quite different to a lot of other people that have come in a very traditional way, like through university, got their first job as an entry level and kind of progressed that way. Yours is quite different. So I think it'd be nice for kind of people to understand that not every journey is the same, right? So
yeah, it's not conventional. I feel like I'm the kind of the poster boy of figuring out something late in life and dropping it to do something you really enjoy after doing a lot of years that maybe things that you don't enjoy. So I finished my A-levels and did a diploma in Art Foundation in London, and then went to Nottingham to do a degree in graphic design.
Wait, why
which
didn't I know
was
you went to Nottingham, Jamie?
well, I went to Trent. I went to the
Oh my
Poly.
God, I'm from Nottingham. That's why I asked.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Didn't
So
know that
yeah,
about
so I
you.
lived in Nottingham for a long while,
Love that.
and did a graphic design degree, and kind of got to the end of that. I feel like when I did my degree, it wasn't overly focused. There was quite a lot of sort of magazine design at a time where print was probably just starting to go out, and typography and kind of website design in programs that were starting to die a little bit, so it was a really kind of in between time, and there was no real sort of focus on anything sort of animation wise. So I ended up kind of specializing in sort of little interactive things. So I guess maybe that's interactive storybooks, where essentially you'd press a button and something would happen. So I guess it was almost kind of like the start of animation, I guess, without me even thinking about it. But I very much got to the end of my time at uni having no confidence in the things that I'd learned, and not feeling like I'd developed enough skills to go into the workplace, or knowing what I'd want to do in the workplace. Anyway, maybe a few months before I finished, my best friend at the time turned around and said, "Do you want to open a clothes shop?" And I went, "Yeah, all right, okay." So
Sure.
so yeah, for the next few years, we basically opened a clothes shop and did that, and just went into retail. So I had nothing to do with my degree except for, the soft skills that you learn at uni, time management, work ethic, etc., etc. So all of those things, and yeah, did that for a few years, and then we outgrew it really, and decided that we didn't particularly want to live in London anymore. So moved down to Nottingham. So moved down to London, and I just went into sort of buying and merchandising for retail, high street retailers. So Top Man, Top Shop, Urban Outfitters, DKNY. So I did that for many years. Very much got bored of spreadsheets. And I was always creative behind it. So and I was always making music. So I kind of put that to use, and did making music full time and DJing for a few years, until I very much felt old enough to be people's dads in clubs. So decided to knock that on the head, and kind of almost traditionally there went into music education, but it was kind of the admin side of it. So it's kind of music grades and things like that. So very much an administrative role for about 7 years, and again got very bored of spreadsheets, and just wanted to do something creative. Set a New Year's resolution one year to do something creative, and one of my friends had said that he'd studied a course at Escape Studios, and that I should maybe check it out. So I kind of went with absolutely no knowledge of VFX or animation pipeline or anything, and I just said, I just want to just make some animations. And the guy turned around and said, well, you're probably not going to be able to learn all of that pipeline because people specify, So I ended up just doing a few kind of taster days, and once I'd realised kind of it was animation that I wanted to do, because I didn't want to do rigging. I'm not clever enough for that. Lighting again, and comp just felt quite techy for me, and making things move just felt right. So kind of once I'd figured out that it was animation that I wanted to do, I was just worked up to save for a short course basically. So I was working full time at my job. In the evenings I was doing Deliveroo, riding to make extra money to save up for a course, and then just made the plunge really. Did the course, absolutely fell in love with it, quit my job, and spent a few months trying to get a show reel together, and working as hard as I could, and thankfully Blue Zoo answered the call at some point. So once I kind of done it, it was a really, really quick process, but I kind of took to it, like a fish out of water, really, fish in water. And once I'd done it, so I think my course started in September, and then by July next year I'd landed a junior role on Paddington, and I was 38 I think, when that happened. So, pretty late on in a career. So it was kind of like, this is something I really want to do. This is, this is going to be the for life job. And, I don't want to feel like I'm working every day, and unfulfilled. I didn't want to go home and say, oh, my day was okay. I wanted to be able to talk about my day and, be excited about what I was doing. So July, got the job, and I've been here about 4.5 years now, up until this point. So that's my journey. That was very long-winded. I apologise.
No, it's so fascinating to hear. Even like listening to it again, I'm like picking up new things that I missed before, and I was like, oh yeah, oh, that's so interesting. I mean, I have to disagree with you. I love a spreadsheet, but I know it's a very particular. It's dependent on the person for sure.
I have moments with spreadsheets. Definitely have moments. Even now, I'm like, oh, I think my job could be made easier with spreadsheets. So it's nice to have that knowledge. Yeah. But it's nice for me to choose to use it rather than to be forced to use it. So when a VLOOKUP works on a spreadsheet, totally happy with that.
Yeah. So I was saying, before we look into your career a bit more at Bluezoo, how you've kind of progressed from a junior up into where you are now, wanted to talk a little bit about how you got into Bluezoo as your first studio, which Lauren will remember a little bit more well than I will. But did you apply for our internships?
I did. So when I finished my course in February, I had a show reel that I thought was reasonably okay. It was, at the time, I think it was kind of where I thought it needed to be. And I applied for all the internships at all the companies, and promptly got turned down for every single one, including Bluezoo. And you know what? It was a really nice kind of wake up call. After that kind of like, what do I need to do? Like to just get my foot through the door. And I knew obviously that the internships were super competitive. So after kind of the initial rejection where you just like, oh, is this the right thing? How much better do I have to be to become an intern? But it was kind of, after I kind of got over that fact, it was very much a fuel to work on something new for the show reel. And kind of once that rejection came in, because Bluezoo was the company that I wanted to work for, like from the very start. Finding out about animation, it was the thing that I wanted to do. TV, I wanted to do cartoons. The realistic stuff didn't really interest me or anything like that. So it was really Bluezoo. So kind of after that rejection, I very much spent the next month just working on another show reel piece, and then just applied again, and not thinking that I would hear anything back, simply because if I'd been rejected from an internship, I'm not going to get accepted for a junior role. And funnily enough, then got a request back for an interview for that. And I remember being in the interview, and my animation director at the time, Will, had said, "Oh, we'd seen that you'd applied for the internship, and the reason that you've now got an interview as a junior is because of that one piece." So it was really, really important that it was just that first piece that kind of ticked the boxes that they wanted to see, that I previously didn't have, that maybe I thought I did. So, when people give advice on show reels, and it's always the same advice, it's always put your strongest piece first. And actually, this is a point where this is, totally case in point of how important that really is, because it was that one piece that got me through the door. And then, I kind of realized that once I've got through the door, I'm kind of all right at talking in interviews. I've done so many in my lifetime that, and I have a lot of I picked up a lot of the soft skills needed, such as, time management and, working to deadlines and things like that, that I can confidently say is second nature to me. So for me, those are things that you learn in university and places like that. So it's obviously really important for people to talk about that. But I've obviously had it in practice, and and kind of moving on down the line, I've obviously managed people in different areas of of life and the workplace. So, I've always been that my soft skills and my management side has always been higher than my animation side. So for the last kind of 4 years, it's very much been trying to balance those out and bring the animation up to the management side of things. So now that I can combine them both, really. So, but yes, got rejected and tried again. And I'm pleased that I did. So, yeah.
I remember hearing about that. So, even before me in the talent team, there was Katie Gascoigne, who OGs will remember as like the old talent team structure. She's still at Blue Zoo. She's just not in the talent team anymore. But I remember her telling me about your application, and she always uses it as it's such a fantastic example of just because it's a no now doesn't mean it's a no forever.
Yeah.
Like, it's loads of different situations, but we see it a lot going through applications, Katie, where we'd have a junior animator apply and their reel's good. It's just not quite there yet. But then they'll keep applying, and in a year's time, it's still not a different reel. It's still a couple of years old.
Exactly the same.
And we notice that, and just to see that you've added more things in the meantime, it really helps. And it, hiring managers or animation supervisors, even leads, sometimes look at applications. They notice it as well. So keep that in mind.
Because it doesn't matter, really. I feel like we see so many applicants, but we still do remember a lot of them.
Yeah.
Be that good or bad. So we will notice if you haven't updated your show within like a year, and then if you have, and that can really benefit you. And we a number of times now that me and Lauren can both say that we've employed somebody, brought somebody into Blue Zoo that has done exactly what Jamie did 4 or 5 years ago, and it's still continued to happen, and it's such a good thing to do. Just keep improving and keep making that show real better.
Yeah,
I think that's it,
guys.
isn't it? Yeah, and it kind of just shows that actually, quality is better than quantity. So it might have even been a case in point where that one piece was the reason that they got in, and obviously your show reel is only as good as your worst piece of work. So if you're still putting in a piece that's you might have fond memories of or something like that just because of the way it worked or something, but it's not technically as good, you have to be ruthless. You have to get rid of it, and show fewer better shots than a range of maybe average shots. Just get that one piece in that's really blows people like you away, really, and that's memorable and things like that.
Yeah, I think you also made such a valid point about the internships as well, because I think a lot of people don't realise that ironically our internships are often much more popular or get many more applicants than our entry-level roles do. So just because you've been rejected from an internship doesn't mean that you can't then apply for an entry-level role. Often they are just internships, for whatever reason, are just much more oversubscribed, and that's not just us, that's kind of like across the industry. So if you're at that stage, then do apply for an entry-level role even if you've been rejected, because a lot of the time it's just because of the amount of people that applied that you didn't get it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah. So back to Blue Zoo, Jamie. So you started with us 2020, 2019, 2020? Don't know what year it is.
Oh,
don't know what
that's
year
a
it is.
really good question, and it's one that I cannot. It's 4.5 years. Yeah, it must have been about 2019.
Pre-COVID,
2019.
right?
Yeah, 2019.
2019.
Yeah.
So
as a junior on Paddington.
Yes. So from that time, 4.5 years ago, you've gone from a brand new junior all the way up to a lead, which a lot of people, I think, would consider quite a quick progression. How have you found that moving up arguably pretty quickly?
Yeah. I mean, it has been quick, and it's not for working really hard to do it, and it's because I think because I really wanted to be here, and it's the same as kind of when I quit my job to study on this course. I really wanted to be there, and I wanted to be there more than anybody else. So, it was always a case of following that through. And just for me personally, I always wanted to improve, and so I was always the first one in, always the last one out, and just taking as much advice as possible, and just trying to do the best that I can at all times. And as I said, for me, it was very much just getting my animation skills up, because I knew I had everything else and I didn't really have to work too hard at that, because it came quite naturally from previous jobs in different sectors. So I could really just spend that time focusing on animation. And, I was lucky enough to have an animation director who, sat opposite me, and I would always poke him and always say, I need the feedback, and and just pass things on, try and get as much in there as possible, and try and just try and improve as quickly as possible, really, and just soak up as much information from people that have been doing it longer than me. So for me, I got here really, really focused that I wanted to work my way up. And I suppose because maybe I'm a little bit older and I have a mortgage and things like that to pay, that maybe that was part of the factor. They were just like, right, I need to make sure, but also because I'm because I was a lot older than everybody else, I always felt that I had something to prove, and I had to make sure that I was, because I hadn't been doing it for very long, I needed to always make sure that I belonged, because imposter syndrome is real. You see other people's work and you're like, wow, how do I get to that point? And and you're just thinking, I've only been doing this for 9 months, and there are people who are have been doing this for 4 or 5 years, and are just light years ahead. So I was always trying to make sure that kind of get in there and just study other people's work that I liked, and just stay motivated. And because it's something that I really wanted to do, it was really easy to stay motivated and never get that Sunday night feeling where you're like, oh goodness, I've got to go to work tomorrow. I haven't had that in 4.5 years, which is great. I'm always really keen to get back in and work. So I've always kind of had that motivation to try and work up and get that animation side as level to the kind of the management side that I have. And now obviously I can utilize both of those things. So it's so it has been really quick, and there have been times where like, oh, I think I should know more. But you always learn, and even the people that have been here for years and years and years are still learning new things, and and it's being open to picking up new things from people that are your juniors, because they do things differently. They pick up ways of working. You're like, oh, that actually really might help me, now that I'm set in my ways and things like that. So it's always about being open and on board for taking new advice. But I think that the fact that I absolutely love it has just seen me through, and will continue to do so. So I think that's what's kind of been quite quick about it, really.
Oh, lovely. Oh, it's so nice hearing about like what everyone's up to and their goals and aspirations and stuff. It just makes me all happy, especially hearing that you don't get the Sunday feeling.
Is that spoken like somebody that does?
Hey, no, no, it's just
the dream.
It is the dream, but it's also nice that because I joined, I think, just after you did, and kind of watching your career progress in real time has been quite nice to see as a recruiter, because it's like, this person, we're never letting them go.
I mean, there's that saying, isn't there, that once you find something you like, you don't work a day in your life.
Yeah.
And I actually don't really agree with it, because I work really hard, but I really enjoy what I do. So it kind of it balances itself out.
Yeah, it's having that balance, isn't it? Like, yes, this is work, and I will work hard at it, but I also really enjoy it.
Yeah.
And want to come to work on a Monday.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
So that's the dream. I felt the same when I came to Bluesy. I'm not an animator, but I used to have the fear so badly all the time.
Yeah.
Before coming here, and now it's like, nope.
There's nothing worse. There's nothing worse than the Sunday afternoon fear.
Nothing worse.
I mean, we asked this question to everybody. I'm very curious to know what your answer is going to be. So, what has been the most memorable or life-changing moment of your career? Because it's not just been one career for you. You've had quite a few different avenues. But is there one particular moment that you're like, this has defined why I'm here?
Oh, that is a good question. I mean, I remember when I was at that point where my course was about to finish, and I was kind of it was very much, should I quit my job and focus on this full time? Because I think I'd figured out that I could improve slowly over maybe a year doing it after work in the evenings, or I could improve quickly doing it full time for 3 months or something like that. So I'd put myself in the position where I could afford to take a few months off work, and it was just that kind of conversation with a friend of mine who happened to be a life coach anyway, and it was just like, what should I do? Should I quit my job? Should I not? And he was just like, I think you already know what you want to do. And it was taking that leap, really. And as I said, I'd made sure that financially I was okay to do so. And that is the caveat here, that I was in a really, really fortunate position, having worked 2 jobs for many years, to just have that kind of little thing. And a lot of people say perhaps the other people aren't able to do that, and and I will always say that I was really fortunate enough to be able to do that. But it was still kind of, I only have a few months before my money runs out, and I need to find another job, whether it's going back to delivering fast food or whatever it is. But it was that moment where it was just like, I need to quit my job and I need to do it full time, and I need to really, really work on it. And that, I think that was the really, really big change, where it was just like, I could, from looking at animation as something that I could do maybe as fun, a fun thing, as just a hobby to keep my creative side happy. But even kind of going a bit further back from that, just realizing that animation is something I can do full stop. Which I never had, and I never knew there were courses for it, or that I just didn't know how it worked, especially like 3D. And because I never really too strong drawing or something like that, 2D animation was never in my wheelhouse, or it was something I never knew physically I wouldn't be able to do it. So kind of finding out that 3D is something I can do, and those were really, really big moments. So it was taking that plunge and realizing that this can be a career, and it can be something that I really enjoy doing.
Because I remember it's quite similar, I think almost probably pretty similar to you. I remember when I finished school, I didn't know what I wanted to do, so I went and did an art foundation, because if you want to do something creative, right, what do you go and do if you don't know what to study? You go and do an art foundation.
I did the same.
So I went into kind of the beginning of my art foundation thinking, I don't know, maybe I'll come out and do architecture or something like that, or something quite practical, that
vocational, right?
Vocational. And then it was kind of through that I started to see, oh, maybe I could just make little movies, make little films, right? So let's see what happens. And then all of a sudden, this whole world opens up, and you're like, hang on, this is actually a career, and this is something I can do for real if I wanted to. Because I didn't know about that in school. That wasn't a thing in school, right? Like, it was completely like not even considered. I know I went to a very kind of like academic school, so arts were that was even further away. So for me, it was kind of pretty similar in that whole like, oh my god, you can do animation as a career, and this is wild, this is fascinating. So I kind of completely understand where you're coming from in that sense, in it being quite a big moment in your life, in your career, particularly the 3D stuff, because even back then that wasn't, again, I didn't even consider 3D back then. I was very 2D focused, because it's very similar to drawing and doing whatever, right? So completely know where you're coming from, and I think that's really interesting.
It's just figuring out the skills that you have and how to apply them. And it was just realizing at that moment that actually I do have these skills and I can apply them. So that big moment at that. And then as I said, just quitting the job to do it full time was the real turning point. So
big leap.
Big leap. Glad you took it though. Yeah. Wonderful. I mean, what you said then kind of ties into our first question from our not live audience, but Instagram audience, where you were talking about not being able to do 2D animation. And our first question comes from Benimation, on Instagram, and they've said, how important is an understanding of 2D drawing for 3D character animation? I thought that was a very interesting question.
Well, my 2D skills aren't fantastic. And I'm not saying that, like when somebody says, oh, I haven't really done the homework, and they have, and it's brilliant, like they're genuinely not fantastic. So, but I think it's important sometimes to be able to convey at least an idea. So for me, if I can draw, a fairly roundish stick man in a pose that shows, roughly an attitude or something like that, then that's all I've ever really been able to, all I've ever really needed. So, there are moments in time where, I think probably, it can be quite important, but I think you just have to, be able to just convey, convey things and be able to sort of visualize them, perhaps, rather than be, a Leonardo da Vinci type or something like that. And ultimately the principles of animation between 2D and 3D are exactly the same. You still have key poses, so regardless of whether it's 2D or 3D, you have to be able to know, what's an appealing pose, what's an appealing mouth shape, eyes. You have to be able to pose, you have to be able to break down, you have to know about eases in and eases out, you have to know about staging, and whether that's 2D or 3D, they are exactly the same. And they vary slightly from different projects because obviously the styles change. So some things are more snappy and quick, some things are a bit more slow and floaty, and it depends on if you're doing acting shots or whether you're doing action or something like that. The process is pretty much exactly the same. It's just one is working in a 2D world where you might have to create a character from scratch, or the other one is a 3D world where luckily you have that character made for you and you just have to manipulate it like a puppet into the right position. So there is an element of importance there, but I don't think it's not vital that you have to be the best drawer in the world to do 3D. If you can get by, brilliant. If you're great at drawing, even better. And again, it just works. It kind of depends on your workflow as well. So there are people within the teams that like to thumbnail out all their shots. So before they do it, I'm not one of those people. I like to get up and act them out and stand in front of a mirror or something like that. When we were in the office full time, I was quite widely known as the guy that got up from his seat and started, dancing around simply because I needed to know where my weight was or how this pose might work and how I might get in. So for me, I like to get up and move rather than draw anything out. But if there are kind of times where I need to explain myself before posing to an anim director or something like that, I can stick man it and kind of get away with it, really. So yeah, you can do both.
I do miss that because I managed to have 2 weeks in the studio before lockdown happened, and I was on the floor with the Big Tree City lot, and I remember like looking up. I was completely new to animation as well, so it was all like, and every now and then someone would get up and do something and sit back down. I'm like, are they okay? What's going on? It's like, oh, they're animators. It's like, oh, okay, just leave you guys to it.
That's it. Yeah, you have to be an actor at the end of the day, and you have to at least be able to visualize acting, even if you can't act yourself. So yeah.
Quite similarly on that question, I was just thinking about it as you were talking about that. How do you find, because you didn't have like a traditional animation education and spent 3 years at university, do you often find that because you didn't necessarily do like a whole module doing modelling or a whole module doing rigging or whatever, do you find that that's a problem, or is it like totally fine that you don't know those things well?
For me personally, I've always found it a problem. I don't think it's been a problem, from outside in. I definitely have felt that there are gaps in my pipeline knowledge. But those are things that I have spent the last 4 years kind of, trying to develop and trying to find out. And obviously when you there are moments where you have to talk to modeling, or you have to do this and that, and interact with other departments, and that's where those kind of soft skills come in, where you just have to be confident enough to ask the question and say, I'm really sorry, I don't know what I'm talking about, but this is kind of what my question is, and can we do this, can we not do this? And you start to, over the last 4.5 years, I've been kind of slowly putting the jigsaw together. But yeah, definitely for me, I've always felt that there's sort of gaps in my pipeline knowledge, but slowly piecing them together now. But for me, it was very important to just know about the animation. So I said when I was in my interview, I think a similar kind of question came up. So how confident are you? Because, you haven't done this for very long. Well, everything that I've done in my showreel, I've done myself, and I'm confident to talk about that. So, I felt confident enough at that particular moment to be able to cover the animation side of it, knowing full well that I'd need to improve and learn new things. So
really beneficial though that you, from the beginning, you knew where your weaknesses were. And have been able to work, and you're very open about, yes, I did struggle with these things. I still struggle with these things, but I'm continuing to learn. I think that's a really positive outlook to have, as opposed to the opposite of where someone, I don't know, might be like, no, I'm good, I know how to do everything. No, realistically, you don't. And so I think it's going back to that thing, isn't it, about there's always something to learn.
Oh, yeah.
No matter where you are in your career. So, yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, next question we have is, are there any particularly good ways to get a foot into the industry, do you think?
Are they good? Having a good showreel is probably the be all and end all of getting your foot in the industry. We, as animators, you tend to, I think, I could probably generally speak for most animators, who are fairly introverted people. There aren't a great deal of extroverts in animation. The job is itself, when you're animating, is quite isolating, and you have to be comfortable with that. Although you have a team and you get feedback. So I think the showreel is pretty much the be all and end all. You do have to put yourself out there. It was interesting you talking about Katie remembering who I was, because I remember meeting Katie for the first time in a at a stall at Blue Zoo and saying, "Oh, could you have a look at my showreel?" And and just getting that advice. So then, funnily enough, then she remembered me when my showreel came in for the internship, or as a junior role. So you have to be able to step outside that comfort zone and try and network where you can. And obviously things like LinkedIn are a really good place for that. But ultimately it's showreel. And what I really liked about the animation industry is it's kind of a meritocracy about being an animator. So it's when somebody sees a showreel, they don't see you as a person. Whether you're male, you're female, kind of what orientation you are, they see a showreel, and you guys will look at that showreel and go, this is great, and then you ask the question, who did it? Rather than, or who did this, and then we'll look at it. And what I really, really loved about that was, it's your work that shows through more than anything else. And then obviously you as a person, how do you work in an office environment, etc., etc. Are you a good team player, etc. Those things all seem to come secondary to the showreel. So it's just the showreel. Get an exciting piece, get something you're really proud of, hook you guys in from the moment. As I said, you probably, look at thousands of showreels at a time. So, you can't be expected to watch through the entire showreel. If you know that the first piece isn't great, you probably know that the second piece, the third piece isn't great either. If people are taking the advice of putting your first piece first. So get that first piece in, hook you in, and yeah, do your best.
Yeah, I think you're so right. Also, I'd never thought of it that way before, but you're such a good point. Like, it's work first, then we look at who actually that is. I've been doing this for nearly 2 years, and I've never thought of it that way, but I do that every day.
Yeah, it's the first thing I click on an application.
Yeah, me too. It's the first thing I do. It's like, let's look at the work. Wow.
Because you always get that question, don't you? You know, how important is a university degree in becoming an animator? You know, do I have to do courses and things like that? And actually, you know, you guys will look at that secondary, if at all. You don't look at their resume before you see. You know, you want to see whether they're a good animator or not. And you know,
we always say that.
Case in point, I did an 18-week course and managed to sort of land a job. And you know, it's just as long as you have those principles in place. And you can demonstrate them in a show reel effectively and maybe in a, you know, in a unique way, that is going to get the attention of, you know, recruiters like yourselves. So all about the show reel.
Yeah. Next question. This is from, hang on, Caro Kowalik, also on Instagram. Unconventional advice for new beginner animators.
So I really like this question because most people say, you know, kind of obviously, you know, the traditional advice is learn the principles and do that. The unconventional advice from me is learn how to delete your work.
Ooh.
Because as an animator, you are, you know, we're really lucky in Blue Zoo in that we're given the autonomy to, you know, create, you know, you look at the animatic, you obviously take that, and as I said, we're really lucky to be able to have the freedom rather than following the guidelines exactly of what the animatic says or what the director says. You know, there is so much input that we have that we can add to shots and things like that, and it isn't battered away. But having said that, as an animator, it's not particularly, overall, it's not your vision, it's the director's vision. So I would say 40% of the time you are redoing work that you've already done. And you have to be comfortable with that. And you have to be able to delete chunks of work that you perhaps are really proud of. And, you know, and it looks lovely and you've animated it really well. But if it's not in the director's vision or, you know, and most of the time, you know, the directors are always right because they have a wider vision as opposed to your singular shots. So if they're saying, oh, well, you know, this might not be quite in character of this, you know, this movement might, not particularly work for the purpose of this shot, you have to get rid of it. There's, you know, there is obviously, you know, an element there of, you know, talking and obviously being able to talk about your work and reasoning is a really, really important part of this job. You know, and confidence to be able to say, well, this is why I've done this or something like that. But actually, a lot of the time, we say, well, can you change this to this because it will work better? And most of the time, it is like that. So being able to delete your work and redo it in a different way, especially when you're doing your own show reel, because it is your ideas and, you know, people tend to work in isolation and go, well, this is my idea, this is my show reel. But if you do get that piece of advice from a colleague, or, you know, or if you've managed to find somebody in the industry via LinkedIn, you say, oh, could you have a look at my show reel? And they turn around and go, oh, yeah, if you change that, change this and change that. And then sometimes they just go, oh, well, I didn't change it because I liked it how it was. If somebody says, oh, here's an idea for this, and you think, oh, that's great, and you think it might improve it, do it. Delete that work and one of the things that I found hardest about becoming, you know, getting into the job was deleting the work and re-knitting it together, because, you know, if you've got a different pose to put in, then you have to think about all of that stuff beforehand, right? Well, how do I get in from the previous pose to the next pose? You know, it's a different vibe. It might be, you know, different timing. And you have to do that. And you have to then, you know, cut out chunks of work and redo it. So my unconventional advice is learn how to unpick your work. Because you, as I said, you spend probably about 40% of your time unpicking your work anyway. So yeah, that's my answer to that.
That's life.
Yeah,
that's the industry and that's the job.
That's it. And you know, feedback is always constructive. It's never this is rubbish, change it. It's always like, oh, I think this would be better if, you know, we did this and did this. And you know, even for me now, you know, we all have different ways of taking that. You know, for me, I like to spend 5 minutes going, I can't believe they want to change this. This is ridiculous. It's the worst thing in the world. And then when you kind of go into that review afterwards and you talk about it, you go, oh, well, actually, in reality, all I need to do is this to this and this to this, you know, because you're not thinking emotionally, you're thinking logistically and, you know, and technically and things like that. So yeah, I like to have that emotional rant for 5 minutes where I'm I get it out of my system. Every curse word under the sun is spoken out loud, and then and then just get on with it. So yeah, even to this day, getting feedback is always difficult, but actually you just have to be prepared to then change it rather than digging your heels in. So yeah, get it done. Get the feedback as much as you can, because you are going to have to take it when you get into the industry. So start now.
Next question from Shreyash Pants 15. I have no idea. I'm a recent animation graduate. Can you guide me on what animations I should work on? So I think we're thinking of things like, what should I put in my show reel? What are those key pieces that I need? Things like that.
Okay. It's important. Again, this is nothing groundbreaking. It's the same advice that you will hear over and over again. Tailor your show reel to the companies that you apply to. So for me, I always, because I knew I wanted to have a work in a cartoony TV place, my show reel was full of cartoony stuff. As I said, when I managed to get the interview for the Blue Zoo, when they said, oh, your new piece is what you got you through the door, the anim director at the time was, you were lacking in an acting piece and something that showed you could portray emotion. So, for instance, so I feel that, the things that you should be working on is, firstly, kind of, if you're not quite sure whether you want to do the realistic stuff or whether you want to do the cartoony stuff, then you will probably have to put a bit of everything in. But obviously, if you're applying to the realistic animation, you put all the realistic stuff first and the cartoony stuff later, and vice versa with the cartoony stuff first. But I think it's always handy to be able to show off something in each shot. So whether you have, I think it's really important to have an acting shot where you can show a range of emotions and a lip sync. And then I think it's important to have a body mechanics shot where, so maybe a bit of action, jumping, running, something like that. For me, what I always thought how I would stand out differently to everybody else is when I was always looking through other juniors' show reels when I was applying, just to see where I stood with them. I always saw a walk cycle or a run cycle. So that to me just seems like a checkbox exercise. And I never wanted to just put a walk cycle or a run cycle in, because it doesn't mean anything. It just shows you can do an exercise. So for me, if I had a walk cycle in, I would want to then put a jump in, or do something else. I think I had a run cycle with a gorilla, and a flying cycle. So what I did with that was I made sure that the gorilla was at a standing still, and then went into the run cycle. So it was showing that I could get into and then get out of the run cycle, and then the flap cycle on the flying cycle for a dragon. I made sure that it was kind of hovering and then flapping, rather than just up, down, wings again, so it was trying to do something a little extra with a basic exercise. So yeah, I think obviously it's important to have a cycle in there, but how many cycles can you as recruiters look at before you go, I've seen 1,000 cycles and they're all fairly similar?
Yeah.
And I think it's go on, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, particularly university students or people from that kind of world as well will also use really similar rigs and things like that. So we do end up seeing the same thing again and again and again and again. Yeah. So we just always say whenever we give this advice, we're like, have those things in, but add a bit of personality.
Yeah.
In whatever way you want that to be. So like yours was obviously the flying, the getting in and the out and all of that sort of stuff. However you want to do it, fine, but
yeah, and nobody wants to see 4 angles of a walk cycle. I certainly didn't, so I can imagine that you guys wouldn't. So yeah, just do something a little different. And as I said, just get in the acting, get in the body mechanics, and tailor it to whichever company that you want to go to.
Yeah, definitely. Good advice. Solid advice.
Yeah, really solid. This next question is from me and Katie.
Oh, okay. This is a toughie.
Oh, it is, yes.
Yes, it's a very tough one. It kind of ties into what you were talking about before, about how before you went into animation, you'd gained all of these fantastic interpersonal skills from other places. and then you've brought them into animation. So for you as a lead animator, what interpersonal skills do you value the most within your team? So if you were going to add somebody to your team, you're like, these are the things that, this is like my dream team almost when it comes to soft skills.
That is, it's nice to have somebody that fits seamlessly into the team. That is easygoing. It is kind of, you don't have to be confident. You don't have to, you don't have to be, an extrovert or something like that. But I think, kind of just being available to be a team player, I think is a really good thing, because we do tend, as I said, like, especially with remote working, you tend to work in isolation quite a lot of the time, so you forget you're part of a team. Whereas actually, there are people, in all walks of life that will just do their work and then not do anything else. And I always really, really value those people that kind of go, I've finished now, does anybody need any help? Or and I really love that. Or people going, oh, could you just check through my shot? And it's just, it's not the sort of the confidence to be able to speak in a crowd of people, but it's the confidence to say, oh, could you have a look at my work? Or how could I improve this? And things like that. Really, it's just those tiny little things when you're part of a team that, and it's thinking about, how do I make this episode as a whole better, rather than how do I just make my section better and it looks completely different to everybody else's. You do have to remember that you're part of a team. And I think it's just the normal stuff, really, like, a decent work ethic and just hitting deadlines and stuff like that, because we all miss deadlines at points. That life happens, things go wrong in our sequences where props aren't ready, or the changes are bigger than what you think they are, and and we all kind of help each other and stuff like that. So just being a decent person is really it. So yeah, and a willingness to learn. But yeah, I think it's important to be able to communicate. I think, like, if you were going to nail one down to the most important thing, it's just communication. As I said, you don't have to be an extrovert. You don't have to be comfortable talking to 100 people, but just being there saying, hey, I'm up to this, can you check this? Does anyone need any help?
Yeah.
Just putting it, just those tiny little things, perhaps, that really, really do, make the world of a difference to all of us, because, even I need help every now and then. And it's great that, my junior will go, oh, I finished my shot. Do you need me to take on a shot for you? And it's like, brilliant. Great.
Amazing.
And, and because it's so back and forth as well, it kind of all balances itself out at the end of the day. Sometimes you end up helping out somebody more on one episode and they help you. So, it's just being a team player.
Exactly. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And then just quickly, lastly, I think from someone you might know, Will, oh my God, from someone you might know, Jamie.
Okay.
From Will Lloyd
From
Kirk.
Will.
He's asked, can I have your spare ticket to a Spurs game again?
The answer is no. Absolutely not.
That's fair. He's not your animation director anymore, is he?
Unless Will is currently my director.
True.
So
I know what you're on.
Unless Will agrees to not give me any notes on my episode, then the answer is no. But if he gives me some notes, then he can wait a little while longer for a Spurs ticket.
I think that's a good deal.
Yeah.
Good deal. I think that's all of our questions.
Yeah.
So thank you for joining us, Jamie.
Thank you for having me.
No worries. Hopefully people will find that helpful and interesting. I definitely did. I learned quite a lot there. And yes, keep an eye on Jamie. Jamie helps out with a lot of the events and stuff that we do, which is wonderful. So he's always around for any questions.
I am like a bad smell.
Definitely not.
Definitely not. And yeah, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, guys.